And here we are again with another video about testing 3 Grozer bows. Grozer has shipped 3 of his bows for testing. These 3 models are well known in the market. One of them is labeled as L2, a Crimean Tatar model. The other one is a Turkish bow, is a sort of descendant of the TRH. I have had bad experience with previous TRH. They have been proven to be very fast bows, but they were not durable actually. This one is supposed to be a new technology, so should be a little bit more durable. And the third one is another Turkish model, is a Turkish biocomposite. And among these bows, the most authentic one in terms of being the closest to the original design is the biocomposite. With these caissons and the profile, it's very much similar to the original Ottoman bows. There are string bridges, but in some Ottoman bows, especially the ones in the Dresden collection, they have string bridges as well. So it's not very correct actually to identify the Ottoman bow, a bow that does not have any string bridges, because they sometimes do have string bridges, like the Crimean Tatar bows. This L2, which has been labeled or named as Crimean Tatar bows, it's actually nothing to do with the original design. There are no caissons, no string bridges, nothing. It's like a modern recurve. The limbs have a rectangular cross section, and because of this bow is a performer actually. It's a performance bow. Very much similar to the modern hunting bows in design. So you can see the rectangular limb design, and there are no caissons and or ears that will make the limb extremities heavier. And this is the only bow with a setback grip among all these 3 bows. One of the 2 laminated bows, which is the grandchild of the TRH, the old TRH. This is actually a Turkish bow model, but it's only inspired by the Turkish design, so it's not very close actually to the authentic design. There are no caissons, nothing, but it's okay to say that it's inspired by the Turkish design. And these 2 laminated bows should be quite fast because of their design. They are designed and constructed like the modern recurves. The L2, the Crimean Tatar model, is 45 pounds at 28 inches, and the biocomposite is a 50 pounder, and the other laminated bow is a 47 pounder.
We strung the bows by supporting the grip in the middle, as recommended by the manufacturer Csaba Grozer, and especially when we were stringing the biocomposite, again according to the directions Grozer has given, we moved very slow actually. Even the other 2 laminated bows are strung very carefully and slowly by avoiding any torque on the limbs. Then we set the nocking points, and for that purpose we nock an arrow with a 90-degree angle to the bow grip, which is of course, or which would not be the proper nocking point position. The nocking point should be a little bit above that, and it depends on the release technique you choose. And because all we draw and shoot with thumb release, the nocking point should be approximately 5-6 millimeters above the point that we nock the arrow. Adam Svoboda suggested in his beautiful book The Art of Shooting a Short Reflex Bow with a Thumb Ring that the distance between the perpendicular position of the arrow and the proper knocking point mustn't be less than 3 millimeters, and the distance we recommend and prefer is approximately 6 millimeters, because it compensates the improper hand placement to the grip. Unlike the modern recurs, traditional bows don't have any pistol grip or an arrow shot or an arrow rest, so proper hand placement on the grip from shot to shot is a matter of the muscle memory that the archer should have. So it makes sense to have the knocking point a little bit above the given minimum, so that the improper hand placement will be compensated a little bit. The next step in preparing the test bows for test shots was protecting the arrow pass by gluing a paper tape onto this area to avoid any wear during the shots. We put a paper tape onto the arrow pass so that we can avoid wearing of this area, because they are test balls. We are going to return them to Grozer. So actually we have seen that it's worth to do that, because there's just a small wear even in the very first test shots. Laminated bow L2 is the only bow that has a setback grip like the early Asiatic bows, and like the bows as can be seen in Selçuk miniatures. The grip is covered with a piece of suede, and it's a very chic and elegant bow. There are stitches in front of this, which is very much similar to the Anglo-Saxon type of grip coverage, and nothing to do with the Asiatic recurs, as far as we can know, because most of the findings or the archaeological findings are not intact. But anyway, it made a very chic bow. After preparing the bow for test shots by putting a piece of paper tape here and making the knocking point, now we are making the very first test shots. For the force draw curve assessment of these two bows, today we measured the draw length and the applied draw weight to the bow. And because of the design, the force draw curve of these two bows are different. Not only because this bow has a setback grip, but also the reflex in the unstrung position of these two bows are different too. So the bow, the biocomposite that is more reflex in the unstrung position, should give more press strain, which means in the early draw length it's going to give higher draw weight.
pounder L2 and the 50 pounder biocomposite Turkish have different designs, and because of these differences in the design, the first draw curves will be different as well. What I would predict is that the early draw weight in the biocomposite should be higher than the draw weight of the L2 because of the severe reflex of the biocomposite. This resembles a Turkish puta or target bow or a Turkish or war bow, because the flight bows are known to have much more reflex than this.
can see the four strokers of these three bows. And as expected, the biocomposite stores more energy at the early stages of the draw because of the reflex of the bow that is more severe than the reflex of the others. And but of course, this green line, which is that of the laminated Crimean Tatar, has not such a steep increase at the early stages of the draw, but because of the lower string height, the time of the energy storage is longer, and of course when the string is released, the energy is released with a longer power stroke. So it makes sense that this bow is still faster despite the fact that it doesn't store as much as energy like the other bows at the early stages of the draw. And you can see that the recurve characteristics of these three bows are different too. The green line again, the laminated Crimean Tatar, I think because of the recurve part is unbendable. There is a good leverage effect, as you can see at around the 15 inches of the draw, that the leverage effect starts, and it makes a smoother pulling bow. But the observers, the test shooters, actually didn't detect any difference, and all these three bows have been found to be very smooth pulling bows. Anyway, this leverage effect decreases the energy storage of the laminated Crimean Tatar, but then the curve inclines again to a very good point in the energy storage, and because of the lower power stroke, it seems to be a fast bow, and later it has been proven by the chronograph measurements. And the red line, which is the Grozer Turkish Laminated bow, has a very similar curve like that of the biocomposite, and even a little bit smoother. And both bows behave as expected from a Turkish design. And as you can see here, the potential energy of these three bows are different as expected, because first of all their draw weights are different. But the more aggressive behavior can be seen in the biocomposite and the Turkish laminated, and because of the Turkish design, the early draw weight is higher because of the reflex, and the Crimean Tatar bow is not as reflex as the other two bows in its unshrunk position, but because the string height is shorter and there's a longer power stroke, both the energy storing time as well as the energy releasing time when the energy is transferred to the arrow after the release of the string will be longer. So it will make this bow undoubtedly a very efficient bow. And this behavior of storing the potential energy makes this bow especially or particularly smooth pulling bow. The velocities of the arrows shot from all these three bows were found to be identical to the very best hunting bows. They either reached or exceeded the 200 feet per second mark with 8 grain per pound arrows, but even the 10 grain per pound arrows didn't slow the bows down. But the biocomposite made a surprise because it is covered with leather, unlike the other two bows, and this is an extra mass on the limbs, but still the efficiency is quite high. And as we've seen in the four-stroke curves, the energy storage capability of the biocomposite is higher, so it performs as good as the other two bows. The fastest of all these three was found to be the Turkish laminated. It is interesting because with the lower brace height, the Crimean Tatar might be faster than this, but their performance is almost identical, but the Turkish laminated is a little bit better. It's probably because of the energy storing capacity again, and despite the longer power stroke of the Crimean Tatar, the Turkish laminated beats the Crimean Tatar in velocities. What we found interesting is that Selim, one of the test shooters, shot with a higher initial velocity than the other two archers, and the reason is unknown at the moment, but there should be something related to his technique. Maybe his release is sharper or something, it should be examined scientifically. But as you can see that the initial velocities of all the arrows shot by Selim are 2 to 3% faster than the arrows of the other two archers. When we have a look at the efficiencies of the bows, we see that the success of the Turkish laminated bow is not only because of the energy storing capacity, but also the capability of the transferring the or converting the potential energy to kinetic energy with minimum losses. So here you can see that the energy efficiency of the Turkish laminated bow drops down to 75.9% even with 8 grain per pound arrow, and at 10 grain per pound arrow the efficiency is so high, it's approximately 81.13%. This is a very high percentage of energy transfer. And if you look at the other two bows, that the energy transfer drops down to only 70% at 8 grain per pound arrow, and at 10 grain per pound the energy efficiency is quite high, especially on the Crimean Tatar bow. This is again because of the longer power stroke and because of the lack of extra mass on the limbs. The biocomposites leather coverage probably drops down the energy transfer to some extent. After working for several weeks to finish the testing of these three bows of Grozer, here's a short summary. First of all, these three bows are very well made, very well finished bows, like all the Grozer bows. Sometimes we see some less than perfect finishing on Grozer bows, but this is rare, and almost all the time the bows are well finished and well made. And it's not different for these bows. And what makes these bows exceptional is that these bows are real performers. They're performance bows, and as I said in the video before, the construction is very similar to that of the Olympic recurves, and they are meant and constructed for performance. Of course, when you are interested in traditional archery, one of the main intentions or main interests is having a bow that is copying the original design as much as possible. And here, among these three bows, only the biocomposite is very close to original design, and the others are actually not as close in design as the biocomposite. But there are more and more traditional archery competitions, and for competitions, such performance are bows that you would prefer, just because you're going to have a flatter trajectory when you're shooting at longer distances. And for all the archers who are shooting bows without sights, higher efficiency bows are always an advantage, of course. And other than that, last but not least, when you are hunting with a bow and when you prefer to use a traditional bow in bow hunting, then all these bows are brilliant hunting bows. The biocomposite, which is not as fast as the others, can reach at energy level of 38 foot-pounds, which is just below the given minimum for the large games like wild boar and black bear, because the minimum energy requirement for these games is 40 foot-pounds. But the Turkish laminated bow reached this mark exactly. It's the 40 foot-pound energy with 10 grain per pound arrow. Please remember that these bows are only 45, 47 and 50 pounders. So a little bit higher poundage or a little bit longer draw or a little bit heavier arrow will make a very good hunting bow, and more than you need actually for taking deer-sized game. They are also appropriate for taking larger game like black bear and wild boar.